Welcome. I'm Amy Watson, a certified life after baby loss coach and mom to 2 babies in heaven. Join me as I show you how you can truly find yourself again. Together, let's knock off those rough, painful edges and learn to carry your grief so you can step forward into all this life has in store for you. This is the Smooth Stones podcast. After my baby River died, I blamed myself so hard. I can't even explain how hard I blamed myself. Not because of what happened, but because of the decisions I made after I knew River didn't have a heartbeat. And I carried that pain for such a long time. I am talking years and years, until I was ready to let it go. And then I hired a grief coach, and within weeks, I felt all that blame and shame I had carried for years just melt away. I want your blame and shame to melt away too. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about what I have for you. I am offering to help you stop blaming yourself in 6 weeks. It's personalized to you, exactly where you are in your journey, and what you want to let go of. You'll be amazed how quickly things can change when you have someone guiding you. I see things that you can't see because I'm not in your brain, right? I'm outside. I can also help you to find the answers you need on your own. You're going to get to the root of your problem so much faster. And you'll find peace so much faster. When I think about the new year and the holidays, there's a lot of emotions that come up. But one of the things I love the most is on a really quiet night when you can't sleep and the snow is just falling softly. And it's that true stillness. And for me, that is like a visual of peace that I see for myself. You get to create your own. But when we talk about peace on earth, it starts within each one of us, in our hearts and in our minds. I want you to have stillness, calm, and quiet in your mind. We're not going to fix the blame and shame by replacing it with something else. We're just going to gently pull it out so that it's not there anymore. What would it be like to go into 2025 knowing that you don't have to beat yourself up anymore? You don't have to blame and shame yourself anymore. You can forgive anyone that you want and need to forgive for your own peace. This is going to be a beautiful opportunity. I'm not going to be able to take a lot of clients into this. So if you want to stop blaming yourself in just 6 weeks, I need you to go in the show notes and click on the link to my website. It's smoothstonescoaching.com/stop and sign up for the waitlist so you'll be the first one to hear when the doors are open and you can join us. I don't know how to say it. I'm so excited about this. I have my Blame mini course, and if you've taken it, you know some of those basic steps that are going to help you. But this is like 10x, even more, because you're going to get one-on-one support. You're also going to get a group aspect. It's going to be amazing, and I'll be talking more about it coming soon, but definitely go get on the wait list. All right. Let's keep talking about blame. There's a lot to talk about, and I have kind of broken it down into some different things over these past weeks of the podcast, these past episodes. But what I wanted to talk about today is blaming yourself for blaming yourself. What this sounds like is, I know I did the best I could with what I knew at the time, but I still can't stop wishing I'd done something differently. I know in my head it's not my fault, but I just feel so guilty. I've done so much work to forgive myself, but some days I feel like I'm sliding back into blame. Why can't I just let this go? It's been X amount of time, months, weeks, years. I should be over this by now. And our brain really likes to compare as well. It would sound like other people can figure this out. Why can't I? They seem so at peace. Why can't I stop blaming myself? My partner keeps telling me it's not my fault. And same with my family and friends. Have you ever felt that? Like everyone around you is telling you it's not your fault. So we just don't talk about it anymore. Sometimes we do that. We just shut down, we bring it inside. It's too hard. And so we don't share it. We just hold on to it. And maybe the people around us think we have forgiven ourselves, but we know inside that we haven't. Sometimes it can even be like this if you have forgiven yourself. Maybe you found some peace or some closure. I really don't love the word closure, but it gets thrown around, right? But then you look back and say, why did I blame myself for so long? Why was I so unkind to myself? Why did I let myself suffer so much? It's funny how our brain will just find anything to pick at us for. All of this is just adding extra layers of pain and suffering. Really, what we see is you can hate yourself for how you're grieving. There's a lot of judgment there. We can have this, I want to call it like this head and heart dissonance. We have what we know, right? What you know, and then you have what you feel. And I see this a lot with blame because you do know the right things. You know you did the best you could. But in your heart, it doesn't compute. It's not sticking. It doesn't work. It doesn't stay forever. And so then we blame ourselves for that. We say, why can't I get it to stick? Why can't I get my head and my heart together? Why can't they feel good at the same time? Another way that we judge ourselves is we have a manual for ourselves. And a manual, that's just a word I use, which means, like how your car has a user manual or your, newest appliance, it's got a manual. That's the rules, the operations, how you make it work, how you fix it if there's a problem. Well, we have manuals for people in our lives, and we also sometimes have these manuals for ourselves, and especially for our grief, which is funny. These manuals, we don't do it on purpose. It is one of those things that just comes up out of our minds, out of our beliefs, out of our upbringing, out of our patterns. And one of the manuals that I see people having is really that maybe you should be able to forgive yourself. You shouldn't still be carrying this. There's a certain amount of time where it's okay to blame yourself, but then you need to let it go. And maybe you just notice that you're so kind and compassionate and forgiving with other people. Like if your best angel mom friend says, I just can't forgive myself, you would tell them to stop it. But for you, you have a lot of rules about how you're allowed to behave. So listen, if you find yourself stuck here, if you find yourself blaming yourself for blaming yourself, judging yourself for blaming yourselves, telling yourself you shouldn't be blaming yourself, telling yourself you shouldn't feel the way you feel, and that you're doing something wrong because you're still blaming yourself or carrying that, here's what you can do. I've got some really simple steps. Now, they might be easier said than done, but what I've seen is if you continue to practice this, it might be clunky at first. It might be complicated. It might be messy. It might, go up and down like a roller coaster. But if you follow these simple steps, you will be able to stop blaming yourself for blaming yourself and just work on letting go of the blame, right? So we don't need the extra layer of blaming yourself for blaming yourself. Are you with me? I know maybe this is a little confusing, but just think about it. Think about the ways that we judge the way we're grieving. That's really what this is about. So, number one, we need to notice it. And I think one thing that really comes up a lot is when it just is persistent. This will not go away. Usually means we have some judgments about ourselves. Also, just pay attention to the way you're thinking. If you journal, or I really encourage you to journal, write down what's going on, write down what you're thinking, write down what you're feeling, and see if you notice a pattern of you beating yourself up, being your own worst critic, talking about how hard it is for you to stop blaming yourself. Just notice it. And then I want you to love yourself right where you are. I like to call it radical self-acceptance. This really means that you love yourself, warts and all. You love yourself in the deep, messy grief. You love yourself when you feel blame and shame and guilt. And when you are shutting down and all of it. You love every part of you. That is radical self-acceptance, and that is what I want to encourage you to do. Now, again, we're not going to love ourselves perfectly. This is a practice. This is something you're going to start small. You're just going to be a little bit kinder, 1% kinder, 2% kinder. Do things to support yourself and show yourself love. If you catch yourself judging your grief, judging how you're doing, just gently remind your brain to be more kind. Okay? Then I want you to look at what is going through your mind. Look at these thoughts. Look at the sentences in your brain that are blaming you for blaming yourself. Why is it useful? Why does your brain feel like it needs to do this to you? What is it telling you? What patterns? Again, we're looking for patterns. What patterns do you see that also might be showing up in other areas? Because I'm guessing for some people, this might be the first time they've noticed this. But for many of us, we will see it so many places. And again, give yourself so much love. If you're like, oh my goodness, I am my own worst critic. I am judging myself for how I feel and how I think all the time. That's okay. That's okay. It's okay to have patterns. That's part of how we function as humans. But just listen. And then I want you to explore, question, be curious. Again, that means we have to let go of some of that judgment. Pretend you're watching yourself in a movie theater. Pretend you're watching your life. Pretend you're listening to all those sentences and words that are rolling through your brain. Maybe they're running across the screen like on the news where they just have all the headlines going across the bottom, right? What are those headlines that are going across the bottom for you? We cannot heal what we're not willing to look at. And looking at it sounds really scary, but I promise you, you're going to make so much more progress if you let yourself look at it. And then once you found those headlines, and this is where you really will see those patterns, whether it's like some perfectionism coming out, some people pleasing, some just these words and these sentences that you say to yourself that maybe someone in your childhood said to you. Once you see them, you need to gently tell your brain to stop it. Just stop it. Stop judging yourself. And we're not saying don't, we're just saying when you notice it, gently remind yourself to stop it. Okay? Again, with no blame or shame. No guilt. Only love. Love and compassion are going to help you through this process. But you can remind your brain, we don't talk to ourselves that way. I'm not okay with this. Just stop. And then the next step is, I want you to keep learning about grief, blame, and shame and why they seem to go hand in hand together. I've got some other episodes about this. If you want to come into the Stop Blaming Yourselves in 6-week course, like absolutely, we are going to dive into why we blame and shame and why it's so understandable. It's really understandable, and it's also not necessary. So we got to be able to hold on to that, because when we know, oh, this is just part of the process. This is part of grieving. This is part of trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. Then it helps us continue to have more compassion. It helps us stop judging ourselves. It helps take away this extra layer of judging and blaming ourselves for how we're grieving. This is a lifelong pursuit, but I do think that if we make it a priority, and if you're here listening to this podcast, you must want to make it a priority. So I'm going to really encourage you to prioritize this, maybe this week, maybe this month, this season of your life, and just say, you know what? I really need to stop judging how I'm grieving. I need to stop blaming myself. Or not, I need to. You don't need to, actually. You are welcome to blame yourself as long as you want. But if you want to stop, this is your sign to notice what's happening. Give yourself love and compassion and radical self-acceptance. Listen to what the sentences in your brain are teaching you and telling you. Question them. Gently tell your brain to stop. And keep learning about grief, blame, and shame. Why this is so important is because I want you to choose your peace. A lot of times we feel like so out of control, like this is impossible. But it's not impossible. You can choose your peace. Now, it's different for everyone. The timeline is different. We talked about that in my the last episode. Like, how long does it take to forgive yourself? It's different for everyone. But what is one of the first steps you need to do is to choose your own peace. You matter. Your experience in this world matters. Your experience of grief and healing matters. So choose your own peace. That's what I want for you. Even if you don't know how you're going to get there, that's okay. When we have that goal, though, when we have that intention, when we set that out into the world, into the universe, when we pray it, whatever we do, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing that starts the ball rolling. This is your life. This is you. All we're doing here today is building a practice where you are kind to yourself. And I promise you, the thing about this is, if you can stop blaming yourself for blaming yourself, if you can stop judging your own grief, you are going to be able to stop judging yourselves in so many other areas. Like, it will just ripple through so many things. This is such a powerful practice. So I really encourage you to try these steps. Come on over to Instagram. Tell me how it's going. You can always connect with me. Send me an email. And I really, again, want to remind you to go to the waitlist at smoothstonescoaching.com/stop, STOP, or go in the show notes for the link and come and join us. Let's stop blaming yourself this year so you can go into 2025 feeling so much lighter and better. That's all I got for you today. I'll see you next time. Are you tired of feeling like your baby's death was somehow your fault? Go to smoothstonescoaching.com and get my free mini course, How to Stop Blaming Yourself After Loss.